Bonjour, Camille Cantu de l'agence France Presse. J'ai une petite question pour Marcus.
A question for Marcus. Yesterday, Commissioner Brunner seemed quite pleased with the EES system being set up, but the French aviation sector doesn't quite seem to agree. The Nice airport director has voiced his concerns, saying that it's going to be more difficult as summer approaches. There are other people who said they're not very happy with it either. So could you just clarify what you mean by it being such a success?
Thank you very much, Camille. Yes, indeed, Commissioner Brunner was very clear on this. Yesterday, the entry-exit system was successfully launched across member states in a progressive approach in October last year. This is a very big step forward for the EU and our collective security. With this digital system, we strengthen the security of our common borders and of the Union as a whole, and we make travelling smoother for all travellers. And we see very good results, and I believe that the Commissioner also mentioned this. 23 million entries and exits registered so far, all major airports connected, and also 12,000 refusals of entry. Now, rolling out such a large-scale system is a complex and complicated task. This is why we went for a progressive rollout with built-in flexibility. That means that member states do have the tools necessary to manage any potential problems thanks to this progressive launch. And this is also what's happening. What we see is that initial changes that are typical for any new systems that have to be introduced have been addressed. And we also see that since the start of the system, this happened largely without major issues, even during the peak holiday period. And of course, member states continue to work to further improve processing time. Now, maybe one interesting aspect is also that we know that the gradual rollout runs until April. But since we hear also about concerns regarding the coming summer, there's also even flexibility inbuilt for the summer period. So member states, if needed, can always prolong this gradual rollout period until September.
Alix Le Bourdon pour Arte. Donc,
Arte? We have a question about lifting the blockage by lorry drivers in the Balkan border to the EU, and I wanted to know why you felt you had to react to this blog, and what are your plans for that profession?
Very much also for this question. This is the issue of the entry-exit system in the Western Balkans and the blockade of truckers that we've seen over the past days. So what I can say on this is that we are aware of the concerns raised by the transport operators in the Western Balkans. We are following the situation closely, and we are in contact with our partners in the region. Notably, on Wednesday this week, a meeting took place between the Commission and the ambassadors of the 6 Western Balkan countries to the EU, and a follow-up meeting is scheduled with ministers from these concerned countries next week.
Yeah, thank you. Basically, it was the same question, but I just wanted to ask you about possible time frame for the decision, because it was said that it will probably be done this year. I know you don't want to speculate about the time frame, but still we need something because it's urgent matter, and the blockade of EU borders is still ongoing. And that is a huge problem at the moment. So they're waiting for some concrete, urgent action from Brussels. Is there any? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nicola, and that allows me also to expand a little bit more on the first question. Let me maybe also, first of all, so I've talked already about the meetings that have taken place. I think that's a very important message already. Now, I would like to repeat again the rules. According to the Schengen rules, citizens of visa-free countries have the right to stay in the Schengen area for 90 days in any 180-day period. Any stay beyond this must be covered by a different form of visa, for example, long-stay visa or a residence permit issued by a member state. These are rules that apply all over Europe, all across the Schengen area, and they have been in place for many years. They are not new. We also know that there is some flexibility inbuilt, for example, for cross-border workers. I think the EVP yesterday in the press conference with Commissioner Brunner also expanded on this. Now, we are aware that a number of professionals who are not cross-border workers might need access to the Schengen area for more than 90 days within 180 days. This includes professions such as the truckers. but also athletes and touring artists. It has to do with national rules as well and existing bilateral agreements, and this is an issue which has our full attention. Notably, we announced in our visa strategy yesterday that the Commission will work closely with Member States to identify pragmatic solutions that can ensure security and economic benefit for the EU, as well as legal clarity for travellers. These reflections will also explore the introduction of new legislation with a specific set of extended short-stay rules at EU level.
Blaž Mohorčič with the Slovenian Press Agency. A colleague asked about the time frame for these reflections. Do you have any timeline for this? Thank you.
Thanks for the follow-up. No, nothing to add to what I just said.
Thank you, Paola. Gabriele Rosa nel Messaggero, Italy. It's in between visa policy and foreign affairs, but it's rather visa. So if I'm allowed, I will ask to Markus. There are maybe also foreign affairs profiles. Yesterday, the Estonian minister who took part in the FAC said that the EU should work on an entry ban, so affecting visa policies for Russian veterans who took part in Russian soldiers who took part in the war, the Russian war in Ukraine. So I wanted to know the thinking of the Commission on this topic and if there is already some work ongoing, some scoping on this subject. Thank you.
So indeed, you're right that this is at the crossroads between visa policy and external affairs. We will give Anita a go on this question. So let's just see if there are other questions for Markus. Yes.
Hello, Ksenia Polska from Deutsche Welle. Thank you for the floor. I have a question on temporary protection because I feel like it was not talked about enough yesterday in the press conference. And after reading the documents, I did have some questions about the temporary protection status for Ukraine, which looks like it was framed a little bit differently this time. Of course, you talked about the priority, but you also talked about the importance of supporting the return of Ukrainians to their homeland when time and circumstances allow. So it looks like there is a conscious shift towards this kind of policy. Now, you also mentioned something like the continuation of legal residence. So I would like to know whether you already have a vision of what concrete policies and steps would lead to a legal status for Ukrainians who would like to stay in the European Union, or what kind of policies would support the return of Ukrainians to their homeland when peace is reached. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Maybe a couple of general points to start with. So what you describe is not something new. I think the core document that you might want to look at is something that we've published in June 2025 when we set out a common European path for the future of displaced persons from Ukraine in the EU. And this is where we actually prolonged protection status until March 2027, so ensuring stability and continued protection, and also paving the way and looking into ways how a transition out of temporary protection can happen once the necessary conditions are met. So the prolongation of the temporary protection was also adopted by Member States, so that's clear, and we stand by our unwavering commitment to support Ukraine as long as needed. But for further details, please also look into that communication.
Thank you, Markus. You have a follow-up. Go ahead.
So would you say that there was something new that Ukrainians should pay attention to in the new strategy, with the emphasis on not only their will to return to their homeland, but also it being a general approach of the European Union, which will be probably decided on in some near future?
No, as I've said, this is nothing new. This is an approach, a conscious approach that we've set out in summer last year. So this means prolonging protection because we want to give stability, and it's clear that our commitment is unwavering when it comes to Ukraine, but also in the interest of the people to look into possible ways once the conditions are there, once the necessary conditions are met.
Yes, thank you very much, Paula. Moved up a lot past this time. So I would like to ask two follow-up questions about management of migration and asylum strategy, which was presented yesterday. First, about temporary protection, it was mentioned now for refugees from Ukraine. But I wonder, what about for other asylum seekers and refugees from other countries? Is there any trend, let's say, to only grant temporary protection, let's say, for minors or family members, because that seems to be the case in my own home country, Sweden, and I didn't see anything mentioned about that in the strategy. Another question related perhaps is, where can asylum seekers apply for asylum? Because the strategy, I noticed, only mentions that asylum seekers should be protected in third countries. But what about the current possibilities, let's say, to apply for asylum from such a country, so they won't have to rely on these smuggling networks, which, of course, we all want to disrupt and stop, and risk their lives trying to reach, the shores of Europe. Thank you.
Thank you, Mose. Two questions. On the first question, on temporary protection. So this is a very specific procedure then when temporary protection as a measure can be launched. The EU did this for refugees from Ukraine. I am not aware of any such measure on the table or even in reflection for other categories at this stage. When it comes to asylum applications, there are a number of possibilities. There are also legal pathways that are in place, for example, resettlement, but also a number of others. But we can go into more detail on this also bilaterally if you want.
Yes, many thanks. Tommaso Gallavotti, ADN Kronos, Italy. It's a question on the strategy on migration which was presented yesterday, because I have a curiosity about the multifunction centers which will be built along the main migratory routes. I wonder if you can elaborate a little bit in explaining how do you think this center will look like, because, to Italian ears, multifunction center reminds a sporting facility, and I guess that it won't be the case. Many thanks.
Tommaso, thank you very much. So the multipurpose centers, this is indeed something that we mentioned in the strategy, and that has something to do with our whole-of-route approach. So the idea is that for an effective migration policy, we must step up our migration diplomacy. This means working closely with partner countries along the migration route. We already have such multi-purpose centers in a number of third countries, for example, to facilitate evacuation from Libya and to offer opportunities for resettlement for people in need or voluntary return as well. So now we want to look at other opportunities together with member states who would be interested in international partnerships, also to work together with international organizations such as UNHCR and IOM. And so basically this is adding to our toolbox to strengthen the cooperation with third countries.
Thank you. Rita Cisa with the Portuguese Daily Público. It's a question on the aftermath of Storm Kristin in Portugal. So the Portuguese Prime Minister has said that he has been in discussions with the President of the Commission regarding help and support for the reconstruction. I was wondering if you could please remind us of what are the different possibilities of support coming from Brussels, and also clarify if there has been any official request from the Portuguese government. Thank you.
Thank you, Rita. And indeed, I can confirm that President von der Leyen and Prime Minister Montenegro spoke yesterday by phone, and following that telephone call, President von der Leyen also posted and expressed how heartbreaking it is to see the loss of lives and the destruction to infrastructure that a war provoked by this storm called Storm Christine, a very nice name for a very tragic storm. And President von der Leyen expressed in that social media post her gratitude to the teams who are ensuring in Portugal the citizens' safety and who are ensuring the restoration of power. And the President expressed that the EU stands ready to support Portugal's recovery through our most expeditious and effective mechanisms. So let me here also again reiterate a nossa solidariedade com Portugal e com os portugueses, but also nuestra solidaridad con España e anche con Italia, because both the Iberian Peninsula and Italy have been struck by storms recently with horrible consequences, which reminds us that these are occurring more and more frequently. And indeed, we are ready to assist and to help us also going through what is being done about this and what are the possibilities ever, because indeed in these cases also already there has been EU mechanisms coming into play.
Indeed, Paula, let me also pass the condolences to the families of the victims of these devastating storms. We obviously monitor the situation very well, and maybe you know that we have our civil protection mechanism. Very often you ask me how does this mechanism work. In fact, the country needs to request. We have our crisis center, our emergency center, where the request is coming, and since that moment we start to coordinate with the other countries that are in the mechanism. It's not just about the 27 member states. We have also 10 participating states in the civil protection mechanism, and since then we coordinate and we ask the other countries what they can send. Usually in such cases like storms, the country requests generators, dryers, etc. What is important in the case of Portugal and Storm Christine is that up till now the Portuguese government has not requested assistance from this mechanism. I stress up till now because obviously situation is developing. It's normal. Every government in such a crisis needs to see what are the needs basically day by day, and that's why we are here to assist and to coordinate on their behalf so that they don't need to be in touch with so many countries if they want to ask for assistance. But what is important that we have activated our satellite mapping system, Copernicus, and Copernicus is very useful in such crises because it provides situational awareness, it provides damage assessments, and the governments clearly see what is the scope of the disaster by satellite. So we are ready to help if requested.
And Eva, if I understand correctly, in this case Portugal proactively activated the Copernicus emergency management satellite system. So this is already being put at the service of Portugal and the Portuguese authorities. Other questions? Susanna.
Reconstruction, Maciej can give an answer.
Okay, we'll complement with Maciej, but I see Susanna who may have also a related question.
Maybe it's the same. I was going to ask about Solidarity Fund. Maybe that's because if I understand correctly, this is something that, well, the government cannot immediately ask for, right, when it comes to the Solidarity Fund.
In terms of operation of the Solidarity Fund, which indeed is meant for situations like this one, Maciej can give us more details.
Paula, thank you for your question. Yes, indeed, there is European Union Solidarity Fund available as well. It's not an immediate response instrument. Member states have 12 weeks from the day of the disaster to submit their request. First, they have to estimate the cost or the value of the damages, and based on that, they submit a request to the European Commission. We assess it on our side and then submit a proposal to the budgetary authority, which is Council and the Parliament, and they take a decision on the amount to be granted to the affected member state. This is the European Union Solidarity Fund, and in addition to this, there are also cohesion policy instruments. So basically, the funds which are allocated to a given member state under cohesion policy can be reprogrammed to help reconstruction. This is again in coordination with the Commission. We are requested to approve this relocation, and after our approval, the funds can be relocated.
I'd like to have your thoughts on the idea of an entry ban for soldiers, Russian soldiers who had took part in the war in Ukraine, and if there is already a scoping in the relevant departments of the Commission for such proposal. Since it's a Schengen measure, I guess we do not go down the sanction path, and we do not need unanimity there. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I will not preempt the details. Indeed, however, this was discussed and announced yesterday in the framework of the Foreign Affairs Council, where Ukraine, as always, has been one of the standing points, and where there has been a very detailed exchange with the Foreign Affairs Minister of Ukraine, Andrei Sybiha, where we have seen once more what the situation is on the ground. And the situation is that Russia is weaponizing the winter to freeze Ukraine to surrender, and ultimately to that. So what we are trying to do collectively as EU is trying to increase our support, secure our support to Ukraine throughout, and also put the pressure on Russia. So this proposal, which comes from one of the member states and had the support of several other member states, has been put on the table as an additional measure to increase this pressure on Russia and ensure that Russia will pay. So we're looking at all means necessary to do so. It is too early to go into the exact details on this, but if so, we will obviously come back to you.
Other foreign affairs questions? Gabriele. Welcome to the press room. I'm very pleased to see you back among us.
Thank you. And this time as a freelancer, so finger crossed. Thank you. In October, after the Foreign Affairs Council in Luxembourg, High Representative Callas said that the Council had decided to not move forward with sanctions against Israel due to the ceasefire agreement. However, she also stated in that occasion that unless we see a real and sustained change on the ground, including more aid reaching Gaza, the threat of sanctions remains on the table. Last month, Commissioner Labib expressed concern about the blocking of humanitarian aid, and she also added, the situation is dramatic. Although it is not in the media headlines, Palestinians are still being killed every day. And that's true because since the ceasefire agreement, Israel has killed nearly 500 Palestinians. 100 were children. And in the meantime, Israel is also trying to stop NGOs from doing their job. And a couple of weeks ago, UNICEF spokesperson stated what the world now calls calm will be considered a crisis anywhere else. So do you consider these actions to be serious violations of the ceasefire agreement? And if so, do you think it's now time to move forward with sanctions? Thank you.
Thank you, Gabriele. Now that's a question for Anwar. I would suggest that Anwar comes up briefly so that there's no need to repeat the question, and Anita will just stay close to see if there are any further questions to you. Anwar.
Thank you, Gabriele, for your question. Happy to see you back. Let's maybe recall the measures that you have been here referring to for the sake of clarity and intelligibility. These measures have been put forward as a result of the unacceptable situation in Gaza, together with actions in the West Bank undermining the two-state solution, including the decision of the Israeli authorities to advance the settlement plan in the so-called E1 area of the West Bank. These measures are not against Israel, nor the Israeli people, but to urge the Israeli government to actually change course of action in Gaza and the West Bank. Since then, the context in which we have been evolving has changed. You will also recall the President Trump plan, together with the Resolution 2803 in the UN Security Council, and the phase 2 in which we are in now. Since you have been referring to ceasefire, we are now in the phase 2, and we are mobilizing all the tools that we have in our toolbox to bring about a change on the ground and to bring a added value as EU, looking at our financial support, humanitarian support, but also security support. I will here also recall that in terms of our two missions, from a CSDP perspective, EU BAM Rafah and EUPOL COPS that were ready to activate. EU BAM Rafah is still on standby, ready to be reactivated and redeployed when we have the official green light, and EUPOL COPS in terms of training the civilian Palestinian police, which will bring a positive contribution in terms of rule of law and in terms of stability in Gaza, in line with what we have been doing also in the West Bank.
Sorry, but Jakob from Euractiv, but wasn't the question whether you consider Israel's actions a violation of the ceasefire?
Reframing.
Thank you for the question. We have expressed ourselves quite recurrently from this podium in terms of the actions that we have been seeing on the ground, condemning use of force, condemning the loss of life, and calling for restraint from all parties to have stability in Gaza as we enter in phase 2.
We all want to see peace in the region, and indeed call on all concerned parties to do what is in their remit to actually achieve an effective peace in Gaza.
Question is about Georgia. Tamtana Chebia from Publica J. So the Georgian Dream has proposed another wave of repressive legislative amendments, mainly targeting civil society and the media, and it introduces criminal penalties, including imprisonment for up to 6 years for receiving foreign funds, and it also bans employees of foreign-funded organizations from political party membership. It may also affect freelancers, for example, who work from home for international companies, but just dislike Georgian Dream. It has many other layers and details. I'm sure that you are aware of those, but the question is, how will the EU respond to Georgian Dream's increasing and continuing repressions? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, what you are mentioning is part of the very unfortunate steady course that the Georgian Dream has taken towards a very repressive regime, towards protesters, journalists, civil society, and all the free voices out there speaking for democracy. What we have done so far, it has been to react consistently, be it at the political level. We have downgraded the political contacts, but we have also stopped the direct assistance to the Georgian authorities, amounting to over 120 million. We have also put on hold 30 million support measures through the European Peace Facility, and no further support has been planned in 2025. So this is just some of the points. Of course, on the Home Affairs side, the Council has suspended the visa-free travel for the Georgian diplomats, officials, and also their families holding diplomatic and official passports, and further discussions on sanctions on those responsible for Georgia Dream's democratic backsliding and human rights violation continue.
Thank you, Anita. Other questions to Anita? Yes, please.
Bonjour, Andrea Ostinelli, Radio Tele.
The Swiss Audiovisual Services Radio. I want to talk about the United States and Cuba. I've understood that the President of the United States, just over the last few hours, has issued an executive order to impose customs duties on any country still exporting oil to Cuba. Now, given the critical energy situation in the island and seeing what's happening in South America and what the Americans are up to there, I wanted to know what the Commission's assessment was of the advisability and legitimacy of that move and what the humanitarian dimension of that question may be.
Sur cette question, on a...
No comment at this stage. What was the second part of your question, by the way? Well, if you're not going to answer the first question, I was asking about the humanitarian situation. We know that the situation of the civilian population in Cuba is very precarious. It's quite a few hours per day without any electricity, and the people don't have enough food, don't have enough medicine, and I wanted to know whether the EU might consider some humanitarian intervention to help the people of Cuba. It's a very worrying situation, of course, in Cuba in terms of human rights. As the European Union, we continue to urge the Cuban authorities to protect and safeguard the rights of all citizens, including freedom of assembly, access to information, and to open up the post for no strings attached dialogue with civil society organizations, including journalists and human rights organizations. Our overall position for the EU policy to Cuba is based on cooperation and political dialogue at a bilateral level. The objectives remain very relevant today in the light of what you just said, to promote reform, encourage respect for human rights, modernize the social and economic fabric of Cuba, promoting general values and promoting the European Union's interests. Thank you.
Une question de suivi.
Oui, si possible.
Yes, sorry, I don't want to take advantage, but I was really asking whether maybe, if there's a humanitarian crisis in Cuba, whether the European Union could and would take action in terms of humanitarian aid. Well, I don't want to hazard any sort of speculation on that because that's a speculative question. Eva, I would tell you all the instruments that we have available to us in humanitarian aid, but I don't think that's relevant right now. Yes, and we hope we don't have to ask ourselves that question. But as you know, in the field of humanitarian law, human rights and humanitarian assistance, we are always there to try and help those who need help. We hope that we won't have to answer that specific question, though. Any other questions on foreign policy? Jorge?
Two other topics.
Yes, hi, Paula. Maybe it's more for you. We've seen in the past week several European leaders traveling to China to meet with Xi Jinping, Emmanuel Macron, the Irish Prime Minister, the Finnish Prime Minister. Chancellor Merz is going there next month. Are these visits being coordinated in any capacity with the European Commission? Because I know the Commission is an advocate of de-risking and a more assertive stance towards China, which is not always respected by other member states. So is this being coordinated, or are you afraid that this is going to undermine your common policy vis-à-vis Beijing? Thank you.
Thank you, Jorge. Yes, usually when there are such visits at leaders level, it is usual and common that there is information about this that is conveyed, and it usually doesn't come as a surprise. And as regards the EU, you know the policy, it is indeed one not of decoupling vis-à-vis China, but one of de-risking. So really building on what can be common interests, and you know what those common interests can be. For instance, when it comes to climate change and the fight against climate change, there we can see eye to eye. And it's really about exploring where there are areas of common interest, where we can join forces. But that doesn't put away those areas where we do not necessarily see eye to eye. Hence the approach de-risking and not decoupling. And with this, we move on to different topics. Je vois Jean Quatremer. Cela fait longtemps.
Jean Quatremer, I can see you're asking for the floor. It's been a while. So, Jean.
Bonjour.
Effectivement, ça fait assez...
Indeed, it's been a while. And sometimes it's a bit discouraging to have to wait 50 minutes to ask a question. My question is about Enrico Hololei. I see that the spokesperson has already guessed. Now, we have the sanction, which is the dismissal of a former Director General. That is a major event in the history of the Commission. I think it might even be unprecedented. We had one Director General who was pushed out about 15 years ago, but she resigned. This is a case of a dismissal. And it's surprising because in the Commission's documents, I don't see any official announcement of that dismissal. So my question is, why the silence? And my second question is, given the serious nature of the actions taken by Mr. Hololei, are you not considering any criminal cases with the Belgian justice system? Because if there is a conflict of interest or corruption, that is a criminal matter. So why this preferential treatment? And thirdly, given the gravity of this, why is his pension not affected? Because if the infringements according to Olaf and the Commission are found, then we might have certain doubts about the agreement with Qatar, because the entire agreement is now called into question because confidential information has been transmitted to the authorities of the Emirate. So those are my three questions. I'd have a dozen more if possible. Thank you. I will be delighted to answer your questions in French. I know that's something you care about, and that's very good. Balázs, so what can we say? Indeed, it is rather unprecedented.
Donc, peut-être permets-moi de...
Well, allow me to say that, yes, indeed, the College did take an important decision yesterday. We concluded a disciplinary procedure with regard to an official, and I think this person has already himself expressed himself in the media, and so this is Henrik Hololei. And the College has adopted a decision. They've decided to take appropriate measures, and the outcome is that this official has been dismissed. So let me give you some of the background to this. Olaf began an inquiry in March or April 2023. This led to a report that was given to the Commission in July 2024. Recommendations were made in that report, including one to open a disciplinary procedure, and that is exactly what was done very rapidly. This procedure was concluded yesterday. If we look at that report prepared by Olaf, there are a number of infringements that have been identified, but they were mainly administrative ones. There was not a criminal aspect identified by that report. And that explains the reasoning behind the decisions that were taken yesterday. As you say, the decision adopted by the Commission yesterday does not impact pensions. There are no consequences for that. And again, why are we taking this decision? Well, because we are taking all relevant factors into account. We are looking at the situation in depth, and the decision that was taken is one that reflects the analysis that was made in the last 18 months.
It's a question. I followed the briefing on India earlier this week, and I looked at all the text. It's just about provisional application. What can we say there? Can the Commission or can the EU provisionally apply the India FTA before consent from Parliament? Is that necessary? I mean, just if you could explain on the background of the procedure. Thanks.
Thank you, David. So other than what is the case with Mercosur, we're not there yet, right? I mentioned briefly a couple of days ago, so this was just the conclusion of the negotiations, and now we need to go through a number of procedures. So I just recall them here. We will need to publish the negotiated draft text, then a legal revision takes place. We call it also legal scrapping, and the translation into all official languages of the EU. Then we propose the agreement to the Council for signature and conclusion, and once it's adopted by the Council, then there could be the formal signature of the agreement between EU and India, and it's only at that stage that one would speak, if necessary, of provisional application. But as said, we're not there yet.
Thank you, Paula. Philip Bedosvin with the Norwegian media Energi og Klima. I have a question on CBAM, so I guess for Ricardo. This week, Commissioner Hoekstra spoke in Parliament and said both that fertilizer production should be domestic and decarbonized, and at the same time that he wants to protect farmers, and that therefore an exemption of CBAM for fertilizer is needed. So I hope, could you clarify how you mean to do both, protecting domestic fertilizer production that is decarbonized and exempt fertilizer from CBAM? Thank you.
Thank you, Philip. Ricardo.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Philip as well. Frankly, I don't think there's anything new in what Commissioner Hoekstra said in this case. As you know well, the Commission is fully aware that there are concerns among farmers and traders on how basically on the prices of fertilizer, and particularly in regards to implementation of CBAM in that regard. The objective of CBAM is precisely to support the decarbonization of production of fertilizers, and that both in the EU and abroad, by making imported products pay a similar carbon price to what EU producers already pay. Now, what you know is that in our proposal in December, we already limited the impact of CBAM on fertilizers by using a lower markup, 1% instead of the 10% with a progressive increase that is applied for all other sectors. And of course, this greatly limits the impact in the first place. And in addition, the Commission has meanwhile proposed an additional measure in the form of tariff reductions, which means that we will temporarily suspend the remaining most favoured nation tariffs on ammonia, urea, and, where needed, certain other fertilizers. And this short-term measure is about absorbing the impact of CBAM. And in parallel to that, we then accompany that with guidance on the CBAM mechanism. And as you know, and I've mentioned this before here from the podium, in our proposal from December, amending the CBAM regulation, that includes a measure that enables the Commission to temporarily suspend the application of CBAM for specific goods in case of unforeseen circumstances. And in that regard, the new provision could be used once adopted by the co-legislator if needed. And I think that that is precisely what Commissioner Hoekstra was referring to.
Thanks again for the floor. I have a question on enlargement, so I think it would be for Guillaume. Or, yeah. Anyway, so I'll go ahead. A couple days ago, President Zelensky mentioned that Ukraine would join the European Union in 2027. So if you could please give your assessment of this date and say how realistic do you find this at this point, considering all the progress Ukraine has made so far, and the blockade by Hungary, and also there have been some reports after that on a simplified procedure allegedly that is being prepared for Ukraine to be able to do that. So if you could give us your comment, we would be very happy. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Guillaume.
Thank you for the questions. What I can say, what you're referring to precisely are the discussions on the peace agreement, and they are ongoing. So I can confirm that in the context of those discussions, Ukraine's future accession to the EU is being discussed, but we cannot at this stage prejudge the outcome of those discussions. What is very clear from our side is that EU integration can contribute to a common objective, which is securing peace and prosperity to Ukraine. And this is precisely what the prosperity framework that we discussed and referred to last week is all about. So this ambition needs to support our goal to make our union stronger and independent. When it comes to the enlargement process and when it comes to Ukraine, we have said already in the past, and this is really well also described in our enlargement report that we published a couple of weeks ago, Ukraine has made really steady progress since the start of the discussions and the negotiations. We can go more into the details after the midday if you wish, but we have done all the screening process. We have already reported all the screening reports to the Council, and we are really working on all the technical work from already at this stage, and we're really advancing really well. So it is really in this context that we will continue to work side by side with Ukraine, and we support them in the accession process.
It was announcement from EU that EU and Azerbaijan agreed to strengthen their partnership under the EU's Global Gateway and cross-regional connectivity programs. And it's specifically mentioned a railroad in Nakhchivan, remote territory of Azerbaijan. And I asked this question, but in writing I sent the question because it was announcement that during the meeting of Commissioner Martikos to the Azerbaijani president in Davos, they also discussed that EU possible contribution and EU to building railroad in Nakhchivan. I really want to would like to ask it's more detail if it's possible now or in writing later. Doesn't matter. Thank you.
Guillaume, do we already have the elements for the reply to this question?
Sadly not, but I can say, we discussed already in writing, indeed. This is an important priority in the region from our side, the connectivity agenda, and we have this ambition to invest in the region in different infrastructures through the Global Gateway instrument as well. There's been already engagement at different level, political and technical level. When it comes to the connectivity agenda, you mentioned that indeed there was a meeting with Martikos in Davos a couple of days ago. I can only refer to what the social media posts of the Commissioner at this stage we already discussed. When it comes to specific investments, I will check and get back to you if we can already share at this stage. I'm not sure we have all the details, but I can really, again, reaffirm the commitment to invest in this specific priority in the region.